Well, thank you all for joining us here on Challenge the Norm. Anywhere you get your podcast, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars because it's a 5-star podcast with a 5-star audience. Got my boy here, Dayne St. Clair, goalkeeper for Minnesota United, 2022 All-Star. In my book, still an All-Star. You know, why not? How you been, man?
Good. Of course, busy summer with Gold Cup and Leagues Cup, so busy with that, and then now just about to head back into the regular season, make a playoff push, and go from there.
So how are you doing? Like, I know this is that's a lot to be doing all at once. Like, how you doing?
For sure, I think it's something where I'm used to now. You know what I mean? Of course, it's a lot, and I think it's always a little tough too when the tournament's still going on and you could see yourself still being there. So that's always a little bit tough mentally, but just trying to shift the focus and move to what's next, because we're still in the season and there's still more to come and there's still a trophy to be played for. So I think it's just about taking that time for yourself and then kind of moving on from there and setting yourself up for the best success after.
Yeah, that's the thing I like about watching this team play. Like, you guys are very much like some fighters, you know? Like, everything can go wrong, and then you're still just kind of giving it what you got, which, like, obviously you do is because you're professionals is what you do. But then there's some pride to it. But I think it's one of those things that in a sport like this, you know, your supporters, I think, just kind of love to see, like, no one's packing it and no one's folding up when things get a little sideways. So, but I actually did want to ask about the Leagues Cup because, like, as I understood it, you know, as it was a bit fired from the hip to like launch it, but to get it rolling, get it going smoothly, like, it seems like it was. I mean, the hype was there and the excitement was there. Like, watching it outside looking in, like, it felt like a thing that, like, had real stakes to it. It felt like a thing, well, it has real stakes to it, but it also feels like a thing that, it's a little bit of mayhem with the schedule, but it gives a little bit of another thing to like really strive for in the league and across the leagues. But you know, to be in it, to sort of see your life kind of suddenly take a left turn and go into this, you know, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, tournament football is completely different. I think I've been fortunate enough to be in the international stage, to be a part of some of those competitions, but tournament football is completely different. I think it's a kind of a different mindset, you know what I mean? Because a lot of the times it is win or go home, and so the stakes are higher. You're normally playing teams that you're not as familiar with in these kind of tournaments and things like that, and there was a lot at stake. There's the new Champions League, or whatever they're calling it for next year now. There's trophies on the line. Of course, there's prize money. Like, these are all things, and I think more importantly, it's a trophy. You know what I mean? Like, we all play. We're all competitors. We all play to win something. You know what I mean? People talk about personal accolades and things like that, but all of us want to win trophies, and that's why we play. We're competitors. We want to win. So I think some people weren't happy about the tournament. Some people were, in terms of outside, but I think from the players, it allowed us another opportunity to go and win a trophy, and to get into some of these other competitions gave us another opportunity. And I think it was obviously nice. I think that the fact that the season paused, because you could put your full focus into this. And I mean, for me, it was like coming from, I was like, this is the summer of tournaments for me. Coming from Gold Cup straight into this, I was like, it's just gonna be tournaments, you know what I mean? And that's what it is. And I think obviously that the break for some teams it isn't ideal without playing games, but if you had an opportunity to win those games too, and you guys got knocked out, so of course it's unfortunate for those teams, but it's not like they didn't have a chance or it was scheduled the way it was, you know what I mean? Like, they had every opportunity to play up until, I mean, I think if we would have beat Nashville, our next regular season game would have had to get moved. So I think maybe there could be some kind of happy medium there or something, but at the same time, it's like, it's a tournament. It's win or go home, and that's the reality of tournaments.
Yeah, and it feels like this one, in a very particular way, is really pushing everybody. Like, the league wants to be bigger. It wants to have a larger footprint, a larger presence on the world stage. And I think to be facing, to say, let's get these guys from Mexico and let's put them with our guys, and let's just you know, grind each other down. You know, just go for it.
Obviously not our stadium, because our stadium always sells out. But you look at some of these other stadiums; they're playing some of these Mexican teams, and there's more Mexican. It's like an away game for some of these teams. You know what I mean? In their own stadium. So of course, I think it brings more eyes to our league too. But hopefully you can get a percentage of those people that came to watch, let's say their home Mexican team, and now that Chicago Fire, for example, can they can get some of those Club America fans to kind of be some of their supporters now too. You know what I mean? So to sell out some of these stadiums. So I think it was a little disappointing in some stadiums where when MLS teams matched up, they didn't sell out, or there wasn't that many people there. But and then if there's a Mexican team there, all of a sudden it's sold out in 20 minutes or whatever it may be. So I think, but also that's just the market too. You know what I mean? I think about teams like Houston. You play any national team game there, it's sold out every single game. We play Mexico in Energy Stadium and it's sold out with 70,000, but then their 20,000 seat stadium, like, it's normally always empty. You know what I mean? So I think that's unfortunate, but I think if we can bring new eyes to it, and try to keep some of those fans in, because that's the only way to grow the game. Because some people know that it's there, but they need that push to kind of get to the stadium and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, you see, and it's like you see the vision with this, because they are. I say that from an administrative standpoint, it is certainly like every avenue, every advantage we can get to make not just like the product look better, but the quality of play also, like to help. Like I said, that competition, I'm sure, like pushes you guys to like new heights, find your limit and push past that limit, and and then of course to go and find superstar players from around the world. That you're like, look, we'll have to pay this dude a lot of money. But him being here is going to mean quite a lot for the league, not just, guys rising to the challenge, but also like, yeah, we can get some fans from around the world to, buy into this, literally. And then also like really pay attention to the product here and understand what we've got going on and how that works and how it looks. And, to your point about the buy-in to the fan interest and the supporter interest. I mean, this game is, I think, yeah, you could say in the U.S. the NFL reigns supreme, but I really look at this sport, and it's because of its universal nature that I think it has a much greater potential. Like it reaches so many more people. Like the barrier to entry to even play is so much lower, and you have like the emotion that shows up in it in all those ways. I think it's just like you can't beat it.
Yeah, and I think, America, unfortunately, I think there's still a lot of barriers to get into sports in general, but I think in soccer especially. But I think you look at some of these other countries, you know what I mean? When you go to the park, you're not playing basketball, you're playing soccer and things like that, because it's a simple game. You only really need the ball and a few friends, and you can kind of go and train. But hopefully some of those barriers can continue to get brought down, because you see when we go into some of these areas that maybe are less fortunate, the kind of profitability and the personalities and things that come out, and when they do get an opportunity, you know what I mean? Like, I think part of the reason like shows like Last Chance U and things like that are so successful is because of that story, you know what I mean? Like, but this is also America. This is, you know what I mean? This is the land of opportunity, you know what I mean? So it's just about kind of giving more of that opportunity. Yeah, NFL is definitely more popular than the MLS, but I think if you look at soccer as a whole in the country, I still think soccer, if you look at how many people watch the Premier League, or, you know what I mean, how many people watch Liga MX, if you combine all those people, I still think that it can reign dominant over things. So it's just about it creating more mainstream and allowing the league here to grow too, you know what I mean? And I think obviously the product needs to continue to grow as well, and I think it has taken strides, in especially this year with getting some of the players that they've been able to brought in. But it's about not just one market or these other markets. It's about kind of getting all these teams to kind of grow with it as well, instead of just latching on and saying, all right, we're gonna that team's gonna carry the league and we're okay with that. It's about other people going to go and challenge them now too.
Yep, because that only lasts for so long. But I want to come back to that, but I want to like switch gears with you a little bit. So every now and again you send me photos of whatever it is you're grilling, and I'm like, dog, oh man, how long you just been like at this?
Grilling kind of more. I got a Traeger this year, so
okay.
That's definitely has jumped up the game a lot in terms of being able to expand what I've been doing. I think sometimes when you live in some of those apartment buildings, it's like, do I really want to go downstairs to that community grill and carry everything down? You know what I mean? So now not living in one of those, it's been a lot easier to just go to my own grill. You know what I mean? Do what I want to do. All right, makes things a lot easier. But I think cooking has been something that I always have enjoyed and grew up. I mean, loving the Food Network. You know what I mean? Just taking little tidbits and things like that, and then it's a place to be creative and experiment too. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that you can make the same. Like for me, like everyone's like, "Oh, send me a recipe," and I'm like, there are no recipes. Like I can tell you what I put in it, but like I'll make the same thing twice, and it's not going to taste the same necessarily. You know what I mean? It's going to be slightly different because it's about the vibe and the feel, and I think that can be like sports too. You know what I mean? You kind of play with how am I feeling that day or things like that, and so it's just about kind of letting that creative kind of thing take over, and it's obviously nice being an athlete, controlling what I put in my body as well.
Yes, that is a big point. And so when you're out shopping for meats to cook, see, I'm pretty particular. Like because I'm not an elite athlete, I want a fattier cut of meat. Like I want something that's going to taste right. Like I want a little bit of that, and find some vegetables to throw on that grill too. Char that up real good. But what do you look for when you're out, meat shopping?
Yeah, I think. Like you said, I think more times it's a leaner cut or things like that. But of course, I think there are times where that, you know what I mean. Those fattier cuts are definitely nice too. But I think especially even like simple things as like ground turkey or ground beef. If I can go to like the 97 or the 99%, you know what I mean, versus the 80-20, I think it's definitely a lot better for me. And you don't really notice the difference too. I think even like the other week I made turkey burgers.
Yep.
And it was something like compared to beef, you know what I mean? Of course, there's definitely times for beef, but it was like I ate it and I was like, I still feel pretty light, but it was because it was turkey instead of a red meat, you know what I mean? So
Yep.
I think just some small alterations like that, but I think also too like there definitely are times where you need to get the fat levels back up. I mean, when you go to Houston and you play in the summer and you lose 7 pounds, 12 pounds in a game, like you gotta give it back to your body too, you know what I mean? And it's not just liquids, but it's about the food intake as well.
Yep. I love that, man. Like I try to do red meat less, as little as I can. So I will treat myself with a ribeye. But otherwise, I'm like, let me get like usually just white meat. Like I'll do chicken usually. Like, but I've gone more to the thighs because it's easier to cook. It's harder to mess that up. Like I think people complain like, yo, chicken breast is it gets all dry and stuff. I'm like, well, you overcook it, but it's also like a very fine line between like a moist chicken breast and like a dry one. Like you cross that line and you won't even know you crossed it.
For sure.
The thigh will forgive you.
Yeah,
like,
the dark meat, you know what
like,
I mean? There's definitely got a little bit more juice, but I think even just simple things like marinating, you know what I mean? Like it's gonna like the food's gonna take on that flavor and some of that juice too, and of course some of it's still gonna come out, or something as simple as letting it rest before you cutting it, you know what I mean? Like it was just like small things like that, which I think growing up watching Food Network and things like that, you know what I mean? Or like you watch those cooking shows and they're like, oh no, like why are they cutting it and things like that, but it's just like subconsciously you pick up a lot of different things, you know.
You got to be Gordon Ramsay to these guys here, aren't you?
There's a few guys, but I think the fact that I can I like to go into my Caribbean roots as well, so kind of create some dishes, and then unfortunately in Minnesota there's not many options here too, so to be able to learn some of them and try it out myself, I feel like I'm always calling my dad and asking him just to go, and unfortunately I never taste the way he makes it, but I feel like I've been getting better, which is definitely nice.
The funny thing with Minnesota to me is like, you're like, yo, let me get spicy, and they're like, red pepper flake, and you're like, nah, I'm talking like jerk, and they're like, okay. You look for it, you can find it.
I always find it funny. They're like, oh, we got Nashville hot chicken, but it's like it's Minnesota nice, and I'm like, so
then it ain't Nashville hot. Like, what are you talking about? Nashville does not come to play with that stuff. Like I'm a Southern guy, so like I've seen this and I love it, But it's a couple things being a Southern American that you're like, they don't do it all the same up here. We're like, can I get sweet tea? And they're like, I have no idea what you're asking me. You're like,
imagine
okay.
me coming from Toronto where we have like Nestea iced tea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're like. Someone I remember like we used to come up for tournaments and stuff. They'd be like, "Can I have iced tea?" And they'd be like, "Unsweet or sweetened?" And we're like, "What do you mean? Like just the Nestea can?" You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like everyone's like, "Oh, Canada's the same," but there is some like small differences that you notice. And I mean, like, I feel like everyone's like America and Canada are both such big countries that like depending on where you grow up in those places. You know what I mean? Like New York is not like California.
No.
At all. You know what I mean? Toronto's not like Vancouver. Of course, there's some core things that are the same, but like when you're talking about countries this big, you have to be a lot more specific because it's so different.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes. Somebody tried to explain poutine to me once, and I was like, every word of what you just said just made me violently ill. I don't like this concept at all.
See, I don't like it here because they fry the cheese curds here.
Yeah, they do.
Which
yeah, they do.
It's not supposed. They're not supposed to like that. Fried cheese curds are its own thing, but that on top of fries, it's too much. Cause like part of poutine, you want the cheese to melt. You know what I mean? Like give you like the gravy melts it a little bit, so then it's like it's not a squeaky cheese. It becomes like, you know what I mean? Like that little melted cheese, like you know what I'm trying to say?
Yep. It kind of changes the
definitely
experience.
something you gotta try versus like not the way they make it here.
Yeah, you got the experience. The food experience is, I don't know, like you are right. It's different anywhere you go. I mean, like we're in Minnesota, and I'm thinking about like the state fairs coming up, and you know, now that I have no reason to be there, I'm not gonna go. But when I was over there, I was like, the food options were everything's fried. Or, I mean, this is all state fairs. This is not just Minnesota. Like a lot of American state fairs are fried everything. This is not unique, but the stuff that you find is just so fascinating. You're like, man, I would normally never try to eat this because it just feels like my body would just clog up right away. And then you're like, but we're here. We may as well try it. Let's try, you know, this and that. And a lot of the thing I actually did find kind of cool about it was like, there's so much of a European influence on a lot of the food culture here, which, you know, for a lot of us who, you know, didn't grow up with that are like, okay, we can try this out, see what's up with it. And then you're like, all right, this was nice. You know, I can go back to what I was doing. But this is so fascinating to me.
Honestly, I was surprised with the amount of good restaurants and stuff here. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Growing up, GTA, Greater Toronto area, you know what I mean? Went to University of Maryland, like right outside of DC, like that's, you know what I mean? Like those are two top tier food markets. So like I was actually pleasantly surprised with the amount of good restaurants here and diverse too. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like it definitely takes some digging to find some of them, but I think once you're able to find them, I think there's pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. And I think to that point, like you've been in Minnesota long enough to know this, but like there's always a way to find what you're looking for. You know, if you're willing to put the legwork in, like there's a lot to like in the state here. And you know, how long did it take you to be like, oh yeah, okay, I got what I need. I know what it is.
Yeah, that was the thing. That was a tough thing because I came 2019.
Yep.
So like that was my first year, and I was kind of going back and forth between Madison and a little bit. So it was like I came here with my college roommate too. So it was like we felt comfortable. Okay, we got each other. You know what I mean? Like kept it simple. 2020, I go to San Antonio. COVID. Come back, everything's basically shut down. You know what I mean? So after there, some 6 months, and then 2021, I felt like was kind of when I kind of started to find it and like meet people and have good enough connections where it was like, okay, then you can go, because it's like not many people from Minnesota leave here, so it's like no one needs new friends or anything like that. You know what I mean? So and it's not like we had a lot of guys on our team that were from here either, or younger guys especially. You know what I mean? I mean now we have a couple with like Fred and Devin, but like that was too young for me before. You know, like, these guys still in high school and stuff. But yeah, so I think it definitely took a couple years for sure, which is unfortunate because once you are able to find it is definitely nice, and I'm sure there's still more that I haven't discovered. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's what I've learned from Minnesota so far.
Yes, it's trying to like break into finding your niche, your people, you know, outside of your day-to-day, your daily life thing or your work thing. It is quite a bit of a challenge, and not that it's like impossible to do, but if you're like your average everyday person who, you know, isn't in the public eye, you know, you're like, hey, I'd like to make friends, and everyone you run into is like, where'd you go to high school? And you're like, not here. And they're like, all right. Did you go to any of these schools around here? You know, the U, Mankato, anything? And you're like, No.
Well, it's funny because like I had UMD in my bio, like, and
Uh-huh.
people are like, oh, you went to like University of Minnesota Duluth, and I'm like, no, I went to like the real UMD,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
University
yeah.
of Maryland. You know what I mean?
Yes, the one people know if they're not talking about hockey. Yes,
So
yes,
I know exactly
yes.
what you mean.
Yeah, and then and then on the flip side, when you are, in the public eye, that obviously things change a little bit. Folks they react to you differently, respond to you differently, and I think in a lot of ways it's so interesting. Like, I mean, you and I arrived here around
Mm-hmm.
the same time anyway, in the first place in 2019. So, like, getting used to it or getting people used to you, it is so interesting. Like, the thing I found interesting about like that, like existing in that space, is people feeling like a connection to you in a way, like the parasocial relationship, where they feel like entitled to, like, I'm a DM Dayne St. Clair and he'll respond to me, won't he? And it's like, maybe he will, maybe he won't.
Minnesota nice is not a thing. It's Minnesota passive aggressive. And coming from the East Coast is something I really struggled with because if we have a problem, we'll just say it. And it's not to be rude. It's just like, hey, we both don't like each other, or hey, this is the issue. And it's like, I'd rather discuss that and like we can deal with it however accordingly. First, like, oh no, everything's okay. But then I'm like, one of us can see each other as like clearly uncomfortable or in a situation, and it's just like, well, if you just were open and communicated about it, but it's like, oh, you're rude for saying that, and I'm like, how are we rude for thinking, like saying what we're both thinking, you know what I
Yes,
mean, or
yes,
vice versa. So I
yes.
think that was kind of something that I struggled with, especially coming in at first, you know what I mean. So I was like, Minnesota nice isn't a thing. It's Minnesota passive aggressive.
It's like a culture shock
Yeah.
in a way.
No, it was for sure. And I think, I mean, the Midwest, the only time I'd really come here was to play against Wisconsin when I was in college, and like, Wisconsin's not the same as Minnesota either, but it
Mm-hmm.
was just like fly in, fly out, you know what I mean? And I knew nothing about really the Midwest, other especially Minnesota, other than that.
It's just fun to be like, and to figure that out, like the cultural parts of it was kind of different. Like, if someone approaches you, is like, hey, do you think maybe you should, like, there are no one gives you commands, they ask you questions, and you're like, is this a question or a statement? Like, I need you to, like, let me know which of these is it, because if it's a question, I mean, I'll answer your question, but it's not going to change my behavior.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's like a statement, and you're like, oh, okay, now I can work with this. I'm not. I'm kind of like that. I'm like, I need it direct. Like,
Open and honesty and direct. Yeah,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong.
nothing wrong
There's
with it.
nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
like growing up in Toronto, like you had to have tough skin. You know what I mean? Because people are gonna tell you about yourselves, especially like playing. I played with a lot of older guys. You know what I mean? It was like there was that establishment of like, I'm older than you. Like, you pay your dues. You know what I mean? And even in college, it's the same thing. And it was always like, so you build up that tough skin. And I'm like, we can't, like, I can't even have a conversation with some of you guys without you guys like whining, or you know what I mean? It's just like,
yeah,
not everything's always gonna be perfect, and you need people to tell you, like, to bring you back down sometimes. You know
right.
what I mean? I think the people that I surrounded myself with when I was younger, especially, like, have allowed me to do that. And I think my parents were definitely one of my dad was the hardest one on me. So it was like, I used to say to my sister, I'm like, I'll be the hardest one on you, because whatever anyone else says to you, like, it won't mean anything. You know what I mean? Like, if I say the worst thing to you, then like, if I'm your brother and someone else says that, like, someone else says it to you, like, I've heard worse from my brother. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So it's like, you build up that kind of emotion and tough skin as well.
Yep. And I think that I do appreciate that strongly. Like, my dad's ex-military. He was Air Force. He was a D1 football player, American football player. So he's, and my mom also from the South as well. So both parents from the South. My mom and my dad both, like, had that value, that foundation where, like, you got to handle your business. You got to be straight up with it. Do what you got to do. Hey, don't beat around the bush. You're just gonna waste your time, waste everyone else's time. Everyone's annoyed, and for you to make this happen, like, it's imperative, really, to be, that straightforward, that that into what you're doing. So that part makes sense to me. The other thing I want to ask about is, I notice it, a lot with, as you continue on your career to, your star keeps rising. There comes a need to, like, protect yourself, your space, the intimate private parts of your life. How have you learned how to deal with that?
I think I've always kind of like, a lot of people say I'm shy, or you know what I mean, like, because at first I'm always figuring people out, like, you know what I mean. I was a communications major, so like I'm always trying to. I like to read the room a lot before I act, and like that's not to, like, once I get going, and I've always been like that since I was a kid too. I was always kind of like shy at first, let me feel comfortable, and then I'll show you who I am. And sometimes that's too much for some people, but like I'd rather I'm true to myself, you know what I mean. And I think at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. I'd rather be true to myself and walk out of a room knowing that I was true to myself than anything else. And if it rubs people the wrong way, or if it, unfortunately, like, sometimes you need to put yourselves first, you know what I mean. And I think not enough people, I think, especially now, it's always about pleasing other people, and it's not about people pleasing themselves, because you can please everyone and still not be happy with yourself internally.
Yeah.
And I think there's obviously that balance of like, hey, I can be in the public eye sometimes, like I might have to do some things that I don't want to do, or things like that, but it's just about balancing and trying to always balancing, I think. And that was the important thing that my parents both taught me. It's like, there's a time and a place for everything, and balance is important, you know what I mean. Everything in moderation is good, because there's gonna be times where you want to go out and have fun, you know what I mean, and there's gonna be other times where that's not the right moment to.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about kind of picking those moments as well.
Yeah, and it's to that other point, like, you don't have to give everything of yourself. Like, there are parts that are just for you, or just for the people that are close to you in your life. And like, getting that point to like stick and hit home and make a difference, I think once you figure that part out, I think like life is a little bit less stressful at that point. Once like, yeah, do I have to be all the way out on Front Street all the time? No, not really. Or do I have to be the guy who says everything all at once? No. And then, I don't know. I mean, being an introvert by nature, I find that we don't be wasting words. Anything that gets said is what was meant to be said. And then everything else is just details. If you want more, you can ask for more, but it's what it is.
Exactly. And I think even too, like, this year I posted a lot more cooking stuff, because that was kind of one of the things that was like, okay, like, it's something I enjoy doing, like, you know what I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with it, like, why not be able to show kind of who I am and kind of what outside, because I think a lot of people always are like, well, what are you outside of the field, or they judge you based on how you are on the field. But I'm a little bit like I am on the field, because I'm like, I can't turn off the competitor in me, but I'm definitely not the same person I am on the field, for sure. And I think kind of showing off, like talking to some of my friends and stuff like that, I was like, okay, that could be an entry to like show some stuff off the field, but it doesn't cross those borders or anything like that. So that was kind of something where I've shown nice, and it's paid off too, in terms of some sponsorships and things like that. So that's been nice as well.
That sounds quite healthy. Yeah. I'm sure Traeger be like,
shout out Traeger. No, shout out
Traeger.
Traeger.
There you go. I think everybody like, yo, I wish I had a Traeger, bro. Like, how I get this deal,
Shout out Traeger for real, man. Yeah. It's funny because like it all just started of me like putting something on my Instagram. Like I was looking to get like a barbecue or grill, and I was like, people just, what are recommendations? You know what I mean? Because I just wanted to learn more about the market. It was my first time like buying my own. You know what I mean? So it was like, people like, oh, check out this, and then Traeger came in, and I was like sold on it too. You know what I mean? Regardless of the sponsorship or not, I think looking at a wood-fired grill and, you know what I mean, being electric and things like that was something that was definitely intriguing to me, and something that I hadn't experienced before too. And I mean, to be able to smoke things as well, I think it brings out different possibilities. You know what I mean? I've had a lot of fun playing around with it, because it's not just a barbecue.
Yes, wood flavors and wood scents. I think as I've matured, I've come to appreciate a lot more. Like just the variety of, what cedar smells like, what apple wood, like all of this stuff. The whatever the flavors that end up in your food, or even the candles I'd be walking around with at home. Just light one and like, I need a wood smell. Like, let me get that. And I feel real good with it. Like, I used to be a citrus smell guy, and I'm like, no, let me get wood now, so
Maturing,
I love that.
Maturing.
I know. We growing up, man, it's nice. I love that part, I think folks kind of worry about it sometimes, like, oh my gosh, I'm getting older and everything else, and you're like, well, you could look at it that way if you want to, but for I mean, and especially in the end, the way, the earth is at the moment, we're just burning this thing up. But for a lot of us who like maybe thought about where our lives would be at some point and realized they're not there, and there is some level of like, how do I, readjust my expectation for this? And it is always kind of interesting to me to like have that, reflection time and kind of think about things like that. Like, well, what if I did this a little bit differently, or what if I looked at life a little bit differently, and it kind of it helps.
There's always the what if too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can't live in the what if, because then you miss the moment. But also, I think it is definitely important to kind of reflect about how far you come, where you want to go. You know what I mean? Checking in with those goals. What are the steps that you need to make those things? You know what I mean? So I think it's give and take, like you said, like before, moderation. You know what I mean? That balance, and there's gonna be times where you think about it more, and there's gonna be times where you think about it less, and that's just the reality of the lifestyles that we live.
Yes, sir. And the last time we spoke, we were talking about your hairstyle. Where'd you come up? What was it that, like, has this always been your thing? Like, where'd you come up with it? What's been your how does this feel most like you?
Yeah, I did it since like my first year in college. Like, going to college is when I started it.
Okay.
My cousin back home is a hairstylist. So she started. She was kind of just like starting out. So she dyed it, and then kind of I just kept redoing it. You know, like since then
Yeah.
I just kept redoing
Feels
it.
right.
And then it's funny because like I used to, like, I've always kind of had longer hair. You know what I mean? I was like, never really thought about cutting it like all the way down. You know what I mean? And people were like, do it. And then some of my friends were like, like, you can't cut it or like change it now. And they're like, that's like, it's part of you. You know what I mean? Like, it's part of you now, and it's kind of that identity. But I mean, it's something fun. I mean, I definitely enjoy the way it looks, and just, yeah, it's kind of become my own thing.
I love that, man. Because like for me, me and hair have had this interesting relationship forever. Like when I was younger, I always loved to like just cut it off. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. I have no hair. This is wonderful. There's no maintenance I have to do. And then one day I look up and I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's balding. Great. Good thing I already like being bald. I don't mind this. But I find it kind of interesting. I think we're in a place now where we talk a lot about hair and how it fits into your identity and how you feel about yourself and what you look like and everything else. And or the fact that, or the idea that, baldness, you look at a bald man, you're like, that's a man. We think about like The Rock and Jason Statham, all them guys, like, that's a man right there, I don't know. Like, I love that there's just so many ways to kind of go about life. You don't have to really,
For
pick
sure.
one.
I think fashion, of course, has become, it's always been big, but I feel like it's kind of almost had a resurgence in the last few years, and it's just about, okay, tattoos now, you know what I mean? Like, different things to style more than clothes. You know what I mean? Piercings, whatever. Like, I remember in high school, I used to slip my eyebrows. You know what I mean? Like, like that was just the style that
that was the thing.
You know what I mean? Like, that was the thing.
Yeah.
So it's always like, other than clothes, like, how can you add to your personal style or things like that, or something to identify you too. You know what I mean? I think it's been fun to keep adding to it and letting people do what they want. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, it's, if the individual's happy with it, who are we to say yes or no?
Right. I think like lately I've been trying, like, self-expression. I just love this part. Like, as far as tattoos go, I was like, would I get one? Yeah, sure. But I have no idea what I want to put in my body forever. I have no idea. But as far as like my wardrobe goes, I'm like, I trend more toward black and to blue anyway. Like, it's just, I've been like that forever. And, which, when the crest showed up here, I was like, I like that. Yeah. So like it was not a coincidence that I was like, I like this club a lot. Just like, I do. Because I'm like, the color schemes and everything else, here for it. Love it. Like, I'll walk around with a Seattle Kraken jersey sometimes. Folks are like, are you a fan of that team? I'm like, well, no. It's just that it's black, it's blue, and there's a giant S on it.
The smartest thing USA Soccer ever did from a branding standpoint was change the U.S. soccer badge. They just make it say USA.
Mm-hmm.
From a branding aspect, that was the best thing that they could ever do because think 4th of July. I mean, everyone's so patriotic here. Everyone just wants something that says USA. Some people don't even know that they're buying U.S. soccer stuff, but guess what? The money's going into their budget.
Yep. And they do whatever they do with it. This is, I tried to simplify the wardrobe. Like, find myself, like the capsule wardrobe concept where you're like, you go with this, you don't deviate too much from it. Maybe you have your basics, you add your little, extra pieces to it, but you generally have your basics. So I'm getting to that point, but I'm also like, well, I'm 32, so maybe most of what I wear is like white button downs. Maybe I get to that point. Just white button down shirt and then dress it up accordingly or don't. I don't know. I have time to figure this out.
Also, I mean, too, it's nice that we're in Minnesota. We get all 4 seasons, you know what I mean? So you get those falls or those winters where you can bring those layers on and change. I mean, it's still a white shirt underneath, but that scarf changes the look of it, you know what I mean? Or things like that.
Yes.
Just like small, subtle things.
I'm a big sweater guy, too. Like, if I ever leave Minnesota, I'm going to be like, I have way too many sweaters. I'll never wear them. I won't wear them all. Like, I can get through a full season of winter and not wear all of my sweaters.
Maybe
or not wear the same one twice.
For you to go to Goodwill then.
Maybe it is like offload some of this stuff. Like let us when my last apartment move, I did like take a lot of stuff to Goodwill and the Salvation Army, and I looked in my closet and I was like, it's still too much in here. I need to go back. I need to go again.
But there's always that one time. You know what I mean? You might need this. Anytime you look in the wardrobe, it's like
that's the problem.
I might need that for that one time.
That
if I don't
one,
have it, I'm gonna
that
need
one. You're like, I keep this because I may wear it.
And then when you get rid of it, you're like, well, this was the time to wear it.
This was the one. You're like, all right, whatever, it's fine. Someone's gonna love this and need it more than me. But this is fun. I know we kind of like danced around it, but didn't really like talk about this whole thing with Leo Messi being here. I mean, obviously it's massive. But watching that dude play, I was like, who stops him? And it's like ridiculous in a way that's like, no wonder this is one of the best players in the world. But like, good God. Like, I know you have to study the tape on this man to do whatever it is you have to do to stop him. But just to see that happening, to know that it's going to be your time to face that. Like, your preparation, I know, does not change from an athletic standpoint. But, what do you prepare for when you look at the way this guy goes?
For sure, I think it's no secret that he's one of the best players in the world, or arguably to ever play the game. You know what I mean? But I think for me, it's been a lot of the focus has been so much on him that a lot of other people are getting into spaces or getting free, and there's so much attention. We gotta stop Messi. We gotta stop Messi. We gotta stop Messi, and then the game's 11 people.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And you're seeing people show up and score. Of course, he's gonna have the moments of brilliance. But we haven't seen Messi pick up the ball right now and dribble through 6 guys and then score.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a combination play. It's a free kick. But, like, you look at the fouls leading up to some of those free kicks or things like that. Like, it's easy to focus on Messi because of who he is. But him alone takes away from the thought about thinking about other players, and then those players can show up and shine too.
Yeah.
Because less pressure's on them.
Right.
And, I mean, similar for us. Like, you always have that out pass. We know when we have Ray, that's the out pass. You know what I mean? Give him the ball, they're going to be able to create. And, of course, I'm not saying Ray's at the level of Messi because
it's the closest comp you got. It's the closest comp you got. I got you.
It is, and that's no disrespect to Ray. I think he's definitely one of the best players in our league. But I think for me, it's about focusing on all 11 players because it's easy for him to kind of sneak up into those moments because if 5 guys are watching him, that blindside run, now it's a tap in. You know what I mean? Like, even you look at the first goal last night.
Yeah.
Messi's wide, checks back to the ball. It's a long ball. You know what I mean? Joseph Martinez is all of a sudden on a breakaway.
Right. I see that. I think a lot of like rosters get constructed that way. Like you mentioned Ray, and I think, they mark Ray, and then, well, good luck. Now you have Bongi, and if Song Bin's out there, you've got these guys all over the place, and Timu's here now, and this is. I think it's a good way to play it. You have the guy where like pressure here. Now Everything else is wide open. Like, you've got to figure this out too. Which, to your point, is why I love soccer. Like, you can have. I mean, we saw this with oh my gosh, with LA Galaxy a few years back with Zlatan playing over there. You know, like, yeah, like he's gonna get clogged up in space, and then you're just gonna need the other guys to kind of finish the job. You know, however that goes. But I like. Again, I like the sport for this reason. You know, if someone is just that transformer, that generational, that they can do whatever, you know, at will, fine. But eventually they're going to run out of gas and run out of steam. And if the rest of the roster around them isn't, if the other, 10 aren't really there to pull it, like, you can't win like that.
And I mean, I think they've done a great job of building pieces around him. You know what I mean? Like, they have 12 guys that play for their national teams.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they still haven't played two of their U22 initiative players that they've spent however much million for. And, I mean, like I said, it's... Of course, you have Messi, but you're also in Miami. A lot of people want to go to Miami because they know the city. How many people have heard of Minneapolis abroad? You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think, of course, you have that Latin pull down there as well. But it's going to be important for some of these smaller markets to kind of get creative in ways that they're going to want to attract players or things like that. So I'm interested to see how these other kind of smaller market teams are able to kind of get creative with it and be able to bring some of those players in and convince some of these players to come here.
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, you think about LA's, New York, Miami, like these cities are always going to have the stars, and they've always had them in the league. You know what I mean? Like Beckham went to LA. There's not many other places in MLS, other teams that he was going to go to at that time.
Yeah.
In terms of the city alone.
Right.
So of course you have some of these teams have the advantage of the city, being more established or things like that. But I'm interested to see how these other markets, you know what I mean, can bring in some of these players. I mean, you look at what Houston did with Ache, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's Houston, you know what I mean? You're close to Mexico. Like, how many other teams are able to bring him in from Atletico Madrid, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of these other people try to play into that market because, like, you see, Miami didn't sell any games before he showed up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They were in Fort Lauderdale, but, like, it's not to say, like, they didn't have star players or anything like that. Like, they had Gonzalo Higuain. That's a world-renowned name.
Yes,
you know
it is.
What I mean?
Yes.
And they still weren't selling out there. So if you look at, okay, like, how can you start to attract some of these people that are right for the market and get creative with it and to try to bring some of these players in, because I don't think Messi's going to be the last one to come. And I mean, even like look at the New York teams right now. Since Henry, really they haven't had that world renowned star. You know what I mean? And I don't think that they're not going to, because I mean,
Time.
Tata Castellanos was still one of the best players in the league. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
So it's not to say that there's not value in other places and not every team needs to have that star, but it's about the thing I like and I hate about a roster is this: it allows you to get really creative.
Yeah.
And the teams that get really creative obviously do well, and it can show some of the differences. And of course, we'd all love to have a free market. You know what I mean? From a player perspective, because that allows the players to gives players a lot more power.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, in terms of the way our market is right now, unfortunately, that isn't the reality.
Yeah.
So it's just about which GMs and things like that can get creative with it and find ways to get value. Everyone's like, well, how did Miami do this? But like, outside of Messi, like you can give a DP as much as you want. You know what I mean? Like, so they didn't break any roster rules this time to bring in some of these pieces, and because they broke rules in the past, you know that the league is watching every move that they made. But look at the team that they've been able to build now within the roster rules. So it's not to say that it's impossible. Yeah. Of course, it's a lot more difficult than you see what's going on in Saudi, where they can just throw as much money as you want. And
I don't even know if you want to go there. Like, the Saudi conversation is something major in a way that I think a lot of people aren't just don't get or aren't ready to talk about. I don't know. It's tricky. I know it's tricky. Like, for guys who think about like their careers and what they want to do with it and everything. Like, you look at what some of the incentives. I mean, you talk about incentives. I think Messi's incentives with the league overall is like, okay, how many other players are you going to do that for? Mm-hmm. Not many, maybe two others. But But then the Saudis are like, yeah, have it all, everything. I know that's tempting, and I know that you can look at it any way you like, and I think for a lot of guys to call it, as they see it, fine, but be upfront about it and just do what you got to do. Like I'm not one to be on the moral high ground with a lot of this, particularly in the way we're talking about sport, because the way sport exists in our general society at large. I mean, you talk about it here in the U.S. Like we are very profit margin driven. Like I think part of why I forget even who said this. It might have been Zlatan who said this, but he's like, it is expensive for a kid to play soccer here in a way that doesn't happen in any other country. Like, you want to come to an academy here in the U.S., you got to pay to do that.
For sure.
The academies in London will pay you.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm going to invest in your kid, and hopefully he turns into something we can sell his rights to somebody.
Exactly.
And a lot of stuff that's got to get like ironed out economically. Like, we just have to decide. Like, do we want to be capitalists? Do we want to be sport people? Like, pick one.
That, and it's like, then you can kind of get into it too on the other side, where it's like, well, this 8-year-old kid or 10-year-old kid is getting sold for tens of thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just like, you can always go either way.
Yeah.
But I think, just access, I think, to me, for everything. I mean, school, education, you know what I mean? Like sports. If we can get access to more people, it will create a better society in terms of healthcare, you know what I mean? Like just simple necessities and things that make society better.
Yeah.
So it's like, why wouldn't we want to allow people to have that to improve all of society? You know what I mean? And maybe that's me growing up in Canada with free healthcare, but
right. I'm looking at my bill. I'm like, bruh. You look at your healthcare premiums. You're like, oh man, okay, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I mean,
hey.
even in college, I had a teammate from Sweden, and like he got paid by the Sweden government to go and get a college education, a university education, because they value what education is and how to improve society there when people are educated. You know what I mean? So I think it's just different ways in different countries do things differently, and there's obviously different values and morals. And everyone still has their own individual ones.
Yeah.
But
we've arrived at an interesting intersection between
Yeah.
sports and politics that I don't know that we planned on getting to. I was like, I don't know how we got here, but whatever. No, I think too that to your point on the roster constructions, I was remembering like Philadelphia Union last season, and like, is that a team that you expect to like go as far as they did and to be that strong? You're like, maybe not, but like they got some dog in them, and they managed to do what they needed to do. So man, I do think that I don't know how much the word parity even applies, like how much exists across the league, but it is a type of sport. I mean, we hear it every day that one goal can change the whole thing, and then anyone has a chance at beating anybody. Like lopsided games don't show up that often in this league, and I think that where that bodes well is as the league tries to raise the level, it's going to raise the level everywhere in the league. Like, does a guy want to go to a smaller market team? I mean, maybe not, but you get enough guys there, and that team is hard to beat, and that I think makes such a big difference. Like especially for the identity of like that market, like for people who believe they're flyover country, people who believe that they're down and out, people count them out. They can really feel good about like, we got us a team here that looks like us and kind of is constructed the way we're built. Like everybody kind of overlooks them, but here they are doing what they got to do, and they they look good doing it. So, I mean, Philly's a bunch of like loud, raucous people anyway. So, you know what I mean? Like they always ready to like let you know what's up. But and I do think that like that type of like regionalized identity exists in this game, which is the thing I like about it, honestly. Like I really love the social parts of it. I just had a conversation with someone about like college football and the way they've rezoned all of that in the U.S. Big Ten, all of that. Like the Big Ten's going all the way out west, and like, but that doesn't even make sense.
Think about when Maryland joined the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Where it was only us and Rutgers. we could only drive to 2 games, Rutgers and Penn State.
Yeah.
Everywhere else we had to fly to.
Yeah. That's the thing.
And that's the soccer team.
Yes.
Our women's volleyball team was taking charter flights.
Yeah.
In college, you know what I mean? Like, this is college athletics we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a whole nother. College athletics is a whole different thing, and especially just because I just watched the Johnny Manziel.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, that's all. It's a whole different ball game.
Yes, and I went to school in that conference, and I was like, of course, none of that surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
But again, when I came out of that, finished that doc, I was like, first thing I was thinking of was like, can y'all please give Reggie Bush his Heisman back now? Please, like, cause you let Johnny do all this. You kind of let him slapped him on the wrist, said 1.5 game suspension, and then you just come on. There's so much to the NCAA that I find to be a little bit like just Byzantine. Like, it just doesn't make sense, and it's unequal in the way they do some things. But again, to have this whole realignment situation and still try to call everyone amateurs, I just can't get down with it.
Well, I used to look. I'm like, when the whole NIL stuff come out, I'm like, damn, how much would I have been able to make? Because like at Maryland, our soccer team was huge. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
9,000, 10,000 for amateur, like an amateur game. You know what I mean? And like Friday nights were there. We won a national championship. Like, we did it all. You know what I mean? Like, so, and like we were pretty established in terms of our thing because our football team wasn't great when I was there. I mean, basketball, of course, had their runs with Melo Tremble and things like that. But like soccer and lacrosse were big people on campus because of us producing and the area that we're in. You know what I mean? DMV is known for having quality soccer players. I mean, East Coast lacrosse. You know what I mean? That goes hand in hand. Like,
I was a Syracuse guy. Yeah, we saw that. Yeah.
So it's just like looking back at it, how much quote unquote some of these smaller sports that people don't think about, but like in that market, like we talked about, what would they have been doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And to your point on having got people just all over the place, like my thing is, if you're going to put this into a situation where everyone has to be taking these flights cross country to play these games, at what point are you going to say, okay, I know you guys have all this class work to do that we make you do because you're here to get this education, but also do this sport thing that we're asking you to do? Like, at what point do you kind of like untangle those two things? Because they're so, or at the very least, like, stop calling it what you're calling it. Like, you can't. There's only so much of this that you can kind of prop up in this way.
I mean, one of the biggest things from the documentary was like when he got the Heisman, it was like, yeah, you know how many teachers want to come and work here now?
Yep.
Education, faculty, all the other kind of staff to go and represent, you know what I mean? Be associated with that. So, of course, I mean, sports propel the university, too, and can kind of hurt the university. You think about all these scandals and things like that, like how much it hurts these universities to not be able to play in these competitions or things like that. So, of course, there's always been that to it, but it's like, everyone else benefits except, okay, you got the education, but everyone else gets the education, and what are they doing for the university in the public eye? You know what I mean?
Right. And I think about, like, I had a non-campus job, a few of them. Worked in the campus TV station, campus newspaper, worked as an orientation leader, all that stuff. And, while some of those had some degree of, like, my face and my name, it's not, I'm the guy whose face you put on television every single day to sell your program to the world. And, I'm making money off this stuff. Like, for college students, it was decent money. But, I'm looking at the football players, and I'm like, I mean, down south, too. So I'm like, I know what the game is. It's fine. But, publicly speaking, like, these guys, like, no, keep them broke. They ain't making no money. But for what? Like, if your mission is to build, if a university stated mission is to build like better human beings, build educated human beings, build productive members of society, well, you're at least getting one of those. You're productive in a way that is going to benefit your bottom line. Your endowments are what they are, and your marketing budgets are what they are, but all that revenue coming in on the back of an athlete.
I mean, I look at like, basketball players. A lot of the basketball players programs are not going to be 4-year guys, the big guys now. You know what I mean? But what university doesn't want to have them for 1 year? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
all these top programs are saying, okay, no problem.
Mhm.
Come for a They know they're only coming for a year. Coaches are probably selling, hey, come here for a year. The universities are accepting them, you know what I mean? So it happens obviously in other sports too, and I think even to the the transfer portal, of course, has shaken things up too, but
Yeah.
it gives players the power, and I think sometimes there's going to be situations where people need to stick it out. Like I look at my time in Maryland, like I didn't play my first 2 years, barely played, you know what I mean? Was that something I would have looked at more seriously if I knew it was as easily available, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
But I think also some of those moments built kind of that tough skin in my position that I needed to have, and it wasn't always going to be things are always good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think using those moments, I mean, it's not something that I wanted to have, but it built me for when it happened in my professional career, and I knew kind of how to deal with it and to kind of stay within myself sharp mentally and
Yeah.
kind of look at it as like parallel situations.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, there are lots of arguments you can make, pro and con
Mhm.
with that, right? So I think you're right. Like to everyone else, their mileage varies. Like, do I benefit from, gritting my teeth and going through this, or do I benefit more from, getting a fresh start elsewhere? It is not something that I think is a one size fit all, but it is what it is, and folks just sort of, let it roll as it goes. So man, it's fun. I like this.
How have you been doing?
Dude, I'm good, man. Like, it's been a couple months since I left the TV station, so I've been chilling out some, honestly, being very intentional about what I want to do next. Like I think that I've arrived at a place in my career in my life where I think that part's important. Like I'm willing to give, a shot to whatever I need to give a shot to, or to really consider all the options that I come across in my life. So, but yeah, I think about all that stuff. Like, what does the future look like? What do I want it to look like? Where I want it to go? Like, I'm thinking family at some point, or I'm thinking about, working with, whatever I'm working with, So, life ain't bad. I think taking it a day at a time is certainly my mantra, and just sort of letting it be. Obviously be a little bit, hungry about stuff, but there's a reason I kind of took this on, started this up. It is a project that both serves some of my skill development that I want, and it also, it's a platform that I can use and call my own and do, a lot of the fun stuff that I've wanted to do with it. So that much I appreciate. So appreciate the question. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah. So before I let you go, a couple questions for you. What is challenging you right now?
I think for me, I want to challenge myself more. More importantly, I think I want to push myself to the limits. You know what I mean? And I think it's easy to get complacent in this industry, but there's always someone knocking at your heels, and we're all pawns in this game. You know what I mean? It's easily disposable, and they'll find the next one, and you'll be here today and gone tomorrow. We've all seen it happen. So I think for me, I just want to be the one that challenges myself and pushes myself, because I know that where I want to take it in my own personal goals and things like that, and there's going to be it kind of took some of that reflection that we talked about, you know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, what steps do we need to make to be in? It's not just about always being comfortable in where you are, and of course comfort's is nice to feel, but it's like, okay, now what can you keep pushing yourself on a personal note for? So I think right now the biggest challenge is myself in my mind, and kind of pushing that forward and not getting complacent.
Yep, I would agree with that. And as you asked me how life's going, like that was a bit of the same. A year ago today, I'm looking at life and I'm like, I'm comfortable, but I realize that there's a lot more that if I, put pedal to the metal, all gas no brakes, there's more to it that I can, push myself into, and it's worth doing. So, me being at this point right now in my life is not an accident and not a coincidence. Yeah. So the other question to ask you then is, in the world around you right now, what are you challenging?
Ooh. Challenging probably the people around me. I think just to kind of be better, because I think you surround yourself with the people, because everyone can tell you, hey, we're all good, you know what I mean? But if we're all trying to grow together, I see your growth or you see mine, it's going to push each other, and we can all make it to where we want to, because everyone always has their own personal goals. So I think even one of my friends, you know what I mean, he's back home, he's starting his massage therapy and personal training, and it's just about kind of talking about how the business plan looks and things like that. And of course it's scary to start on a new adventure, but I think just pushing him and asking him the hard questions. Okay, well, what are your end goals? What are your steps? You know what I mean? And kind of help build that plan with him, so that way he can kind of push me towards mine too. And I think of course that's only one example, but I think just pushing the people around me to not just be comfortable in the status quo. If we always talk about we want this, we want that, but it's like sometimes what are the steps are we actually taking to get there? You know what I mean? Because we all want it all. You know what I mean? But how much of our actually is are taking the steps and being uncomfortable in those processes to get to those places.
Yeah, I would agree with you, man. I love hearing that. And I think a lot about, like, you know, other guys that I know that you play with who have their side hustles or the things that they do that aren't the game, you know, like businesses and things like that. At what point do you start thinking about that sort of thing? Or do you?
For me, I think my life has always been soccer, and I think focusing fully on that, I think of course I've achieved a little bit, but I think there's definitely some more that I want to achieve. And I think for me, the position I play, I'm fortunate enough to be able to play a little bit longer than some other guys, you know what I mean? So I think knock on wood that I'm able to, but I think for me it's the next couple of years for my career could be really crucial and really change the trajectory and of my life potentially, you know what I mean? I think obviously the World Cup is going to be on home soil, the next one. So I think obviously that and playing a part, you know, of course I was at this past World Cup, a part of history for Canada, but I think there's more history that I want to be a part of, for example, you know what I mean, getting that first win at a World Cup, you know what I mean, and being able to play a World Cup on home soil is something that very few people get to see. I think, I mean, I look at what Australia women's team have just done. I mean, I know they lost today, but to be able to make a semifinals when some people would even think that they would make it out of the group potentially, you know what I mean? So I think that's obviously in terms of the soccer aspect. I still feel like I have a lot more to achieve too. You know what I mean? I think I don't think I've reached my peak yet, and I hope to kind of continue to grow that and push the peak even further. You know what I mean? I think with every step you make, you push the peak further, and so I think for me it's just about kind of continuing to strive and sacrifice and push myself into those uncomfortable moments, because I think last year, of course, was a little bit of a roller coaster, and things kind of happened pretty quickly, and it was just about riding the wave. You know what I mean? Everything was going so well. It was just about riding the wave, and I think this year, not to say that I've played bad, but I don't think I played my best on a consistent basis. You know what I mean? So I think just kind of looking back at the realities, you know what I mean? Because of course there's going to be times where everything was going right, like last year, you know what I mean? Especially at the beginning of the year, and then there's going to be times, so it's about the response. And I think my position is a little bit different sometimes because I can only react to what happens in front of me. I can't really control a lot, you know what I mean? So there's going to be games where I don't touch the ball and it's a perfect game, and there's going to be games where I have to touch the ball, like New York Red Bulls last year, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
So I think in my position it's a little difficult to judge the actual performances sometimes, because not every goal I can do something about, and obviously there's goals that I want back or plays that I want back. But I think it's tough to look at the scoreline and directly relate it to my performance sometimes, you know what I mean, in the position that I play. So I think just being a little more analytical of what it is and seeing how I can push myself to where I want to go, you know what I mean, and like I said, push those people around me to push me too, because I think when you're doing well, everyone's like, you're doing well, and it's like sometimes you need someone to say, hey, you're not doing well, or you're doing well, but you can still improve this, you know. And I think that's something that I've always had is people saying, hey, you can improve this, and it's like, even though I'm doing good, if I can keep adding to my craft, then it's only gonna improve me. So I think personally, it's just focusing on what it is I want to take, and really the sacrifice it's gonna take if I really want to get there.
Having seen the World Cup, how does that feel? Like the difference between, any other international play and then the World Cup. Like, is there a difference to that? Is there something else to it?
It's the biggest stage in the world.
Mm.
For any competition, Olympics, anything, like the World Cup is the biggest stage in the world. To talk about how many people watch the Super Bowl, when it comes to the World Cup, all eyes from all around the world, not just one country are around you, and you're supporting a whole country. I think for Canada, a lot of people were so proud that we got there, you know what I mean? And we're a representation of that country, to put our country in the light, to talk about, you know what I mean, that performance. I think you look at the celebrations in Argentina and what that did. I think you look at, like, whatever celebrations in the NBA or NFL or these parades, and it's like, no, like these players had to get helicoptered out, you know what I mean? And it's just like what that means to the country. And I think, of course, some countries are bigger footballing countries than others, you know what I mean? But I think just that pride and that joy and that fight, I think, I mean, you talk about our team Canada, we're always fighting, but that's who we are, you know what I mean? That's our identity, and that's who we tap into that, you know what I mean? We talk about people representing and fighting for what we stand for, and for us, it's we see each other as brothers. So if you're fighting one, you're fighting all, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think for us, we have that chip on our shoulder, because to a lot of the world, being in Canada, it's your USA's little brother, you know what I mean? And I think we've always had that chip on our shoulder, and we will continue to, and to just earn that respect, you know what I mean? I think there's players on our team that have said, like, oh, this team didn't want them because they were Canadian. You know what I mean? Nothing to do with whatever their abilities have, but erasing that stigma behind us in this market, you know what I mean? And I think you look at how many of the American guys are getting moves and doing things, and how hard it is for the Canadians to do the same thing. And we are competing with them, you know what I mean? In World Cup qualifying, we were able to beat them. So it's like, it's not to say that we don't have the talent level or things like that, but it's just kind of gaining and earning that respect on a consistent basis. Not make this a one-off, you know what I mean? I think even when it got announced that we were getting the 2026 World Cup, everyone was like, that's going to be your guys' World Cup. But our focus was always on 2022 and reaching there, because we know what that would mean for our country. And then now it's it's going to be 2 World Cups in a row, but it's about continuing that, making that the norm. Hey, when we don't make the World Cup, everyone should be, you know what I mean, talking about it and things like that. It's just kind of, like you said, growing the game for us, and creating more pathways for our players, and allowing the passport to mean something.
Put a little more respect on Canada's name with these guys. No, I feel that, man. I do. Man, well, Dayne, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time. It has been an hour and 10 minutes. So I will let you get on with your day, sir. Thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us on Challenge the Norm. Anywhere you get your podcasts, rate us, review us, give us 5 stars. It's the 5-star podcast with a 5-star audience and a 5-star goalkeeper for Team Canada. So, well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you all in a few days. Peace.